A few of the videos that get the most views on my channel are my speech videos, and I strategically place them as like the second thing that you see when you click on my channel that's underneath the uploads. And even though there's only 5 of them, they still get like kind of a bigger audience than normally what I'm used to from like making one of like these kinds of videos. And like, not that I've ever been in the closet about this fact before, but I was a teenage speech queen, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. A lot of prolific people have been a part of their school speech teams. James Dean, Ursula the Sea Witch, Ernest Borgnine. Don't look up that last one. But I'm here today to tell you that that's okay. Being a part of the speech team is okay. There's nothing wrong with you. Outwardly. And even though I'm like 5 years-ish removed from my high school speech team, I really do feel like these kids are like a special kind of breed. For a lot of people in the speech team, they have like crippling anxiety, but going up and performing a 5 to 10, sometimes even 15-minute speech all by themselves is huge. It's really big in building that kind of confidence that people need going forward, especially into like acting, if they want to go into that. We'll touch on that later. Or if they just want to go into like some sort of business, it helps build public speaking skills that you wouldn't normally get from doing something like sports. And this is low-key going to be a companion piece to the previous video that I did, which was called Schools Are Cutting Sports! Exclamation point. And we're going to kind of be talking about the reasons why schools shouldn't be cutting their arts programs, specifically their speech team, because they help kids in ways that sports do not. And so first, a little background. I was on my high school speech team for technically 4 speech seasons, but really it was more like 3.5 because I joined halfway through my freshman year speech season. So there are 9 different sanctioned events in Nebraska where I speeched at. They vary from like state to state, but a few of like 3 of the staple events are humorous prose, dramatic interp, and duet, whether that be duo or duet acting. My freshman year, I did extemp and oral interpretation of drama, OID for short. So in extemp, you draw a topic and you have an hour or half hour, depending on which meet you go to make up a 5 to 7 minute speech about the topic that you picked. And in OID, you take a cutting of like a longer script or whatever you want to and cut it down to 15 minutes with everybody playing 1 or 2 or more different characters throughout. You can't have props and you can't wear costumes, but you can hold a book and synchronize your page turns. God, the more I describe this, the weirder it gets. But going through that inaugural season for me, I found out that I really didn't enjoy extemp all that much. I really enjoyed the more like acting type events like OID, even though our OID was trash that year. And so going into sophomore year, I was more confident, and I had persuaded a few of our friends to join the speech team, and from there we had some like decent success. So my sophomore year, I did OID, entertainment, and impromptu. But OID and entertainment were my main 2 events. Entertainment is a speech where you have 3 points and basically you just have to make whatever topic you're covering funny. And impromptu is basically like extemp, except the topics aren't political, they're random, like,
you wake up as a rock. What do you do?
I deadass got that question once and I chose to skip it for some sort of weather one. I don't know. And our OID team went to state that year. We did this really stupid script called Gums, which was a parody of Jaws, but it was about a salmon. They sucked on people's legs. And then, of course, you keep building on these skills that you get as you go from year to year. And so my junior year, we did OID again with basically the same team, minus 1 girl. We replaced her with somebody else. I also did duet and humorous prose for like 3 meets. And I will admit, I am a speech cheater, but I only did it to see if I could successfully do a humorous prose by myself. I wasn't gonna go like on our district team or go to state or whatever, but I just was more or less doing it more as a curiosity to see if I would be able to pull this off by myself in some point in the future. Our OAD that year was called Breaking News, which I cut down from like an original like hour and a half script. And so we really condensed it, and judges either loved how fast it went or hated how fast it went. And I really became kind of like a speech dictator that year. I was really kind of like disregarding my OID team's feelings, and I feel so bad about it then, even though I didn't realize that was going on until they told me. And I feel kind of bad about it now, but like you live and you learn, you grow. Our duet did not end up going to state, but our OID did. Yeah. And so senior year, the coup de grace of my speech career, I did OID and humorous and duet. And all three placed at almost every meet that we went to, except the duet once. And my humorous and my OID went to state, and they both ended up placing in the top 3. I got runner-up in HI, and I got 3rd place in OID. Both, which got 150s in state finals, which is the perfect score that you can get in Nebraska. Other scores go on like a 100-point system, which I think is bonkers. But this success on the speech team really helped set me up for wanting to pursue acting in college. And so when I got to college, the only credentials I had to my name were like my speech credits, as well as like the 4 one-act plays that I had been in up until then. And a lot of my friends kind of were like, oh, well, that's weird. Like, I wouldn't count that as like real performing or real acting, even though that was like, these were like the only things I had to my name at that point in time as a performer. And at least at my college, our professors were not huge fans of like the speechy, interpy type of performing, because interpretation is the death of art. And so my freshman year, the acting professor I had really tried to like break me of those like speech-like habits, and it worked, I think. Sometimes I still slip them in because I do find that there are some like decently applicable gestures, actions, ways of saying things that can like really work, especially for comedy. Not so much drama, but comedy more so. And I don't know, I think as a performer I've learned to like let go of a lot of those things, except for the things that I feel kind of work, and things that I can like kind of slip in there without them like knowing that it's like a speechy type thing, or if they do, they like it because they think it's funny. What it all kind of boils down to, especially in that kind of performance, is that it feels very schmackty. Schmackty stands for shit acting. And really what acting comes down to is like feeling of truth, of being able to say something and have the other person you're talking to believe it and not feel like you're just reciting lines at them. And some events in speech do lean more towards like a realistic type of acting, more so than like the over-the-top mouth in corner, oh, I'm doing a speech right now type of thing. The events that I did were really more of the whole corner and mouth, synchronized page turns. But from like the recent speech meets that I've gone and judged, I feel like a lot of events, especially like duet, the duet acting event is pivoting more towards realism, which I think is kind of cool. But also sometimes they can get like really unrealistically uncomfortable. When I went to NITALK, which is the National Individual Event Tournament of Champions, there was a duet acting piece where they made out for, I want to say, a good like 30 seconds, and like everybody in the room was kind of looking at each other like,
is this just an excuse for them to get their time in?
So I feel like there are pros and cons to like leaning towards a more realistic way of performing in speech. There's also been a trend recently, from what I've noticed, that was not a thing when I was in high school. People are cutting down musicals. Instead of doing more like traditional speech pieces, they're cutting down musicals and like longer pieces of literature to fit in those time slots. And like I totally get it. Like that's where like the well-written stuff is. Like the musicals and plays are where the well-written literature is. So it does not only feel good in your mouth, but it feels good to hear. Instead of some of those like really contrived like speech pieces that are written specifically for a speech format, I feel like those are the more cringy out of all the material that you could possibly do. Oh, and a pro tip, don't do the boy book. The boy book sucks. do something sophisticated, like Malcolm X Jefferson Elementary School proudly presents a 5th grade production of a chorus line, which is a real script that really exists. I should know. I was in it. But really, what the speech team really teaches somebody to do is feel more confident in their skin. And public speaking is a really valuable tool to have once going into a professional setting, or even going into a college setting too, because there are college classes that you need to take that lean heavily on speaking or creating a dialogue. So feeling comfortable with yourself and your speaking ability really helps you in the long run. Not many people, parents especially, go to attend speech meets because they can last all day. You can get to a school at 8 o'clock in the morning and not leave until about 7 that night. So what parent wants to stick around and see you perform a minimum of twice, maximum of 3 or 4 times, and then wait around for 2 more hours for the awards to get announced when they can just hear about it when you get home? So unless your school does something like a speaker's night, there's no way that people from the community are going to trek out 50 miles to another school and watch you perform. They only save that for football. So it really is kind of a shame when schools shunt aside their speech teams in favor of sports because the money is tight. But if you ended up watching my last video, you can see that even sports programs aren't safe, even if they are the last to go. But there is a level of camaraderie that does come with a speech team that is just as strong, if not stronger, than how it would be on any kind of sports team. Speech team works very similarly to a track team, let's say. So a track meet, any given track meet and any given speech meet run kind of a similar way. You have 1 round where you perform, and you have 2 rounds where you perform. So basically you have 2 guaranteed rounds, or heats, as you would call it in track. And those people that bubble up to the top of each round get to move on to the final round, where they compete to be ranked top 1 through 6, or 1 through 24, depending on how big the meet is. But I have a feeling people, parents, community members don't want to go see a speech team in action because they don't really understand what a speech team is, or what it does, or what it means. And it can be really weird to see one person popping in and out of character performing a 10-minute speech that could be hilariously painful if done wrong. But what is kind of tough to judge is that speech meets and people who succeed in speech are all praised based on subjectivity. Instead of your actual physical feats, you are physically better than somebody else, it's all based on judge opinion, which means you have to perform to the best of your ability or have material that appeals to the person who's judging you in order to advance on to the next round. Time is a factor in helping you get ahead, but very rarely is that the case. I think without my high school speech team, I would not have the confidence I had going into college, even if it was kind of tested, let's say. But speech teams ultimately do cost less than a sports team would, because speech teams don't have to buy their own uniforms. They typically more so only have to pay for the little binders that you use to synchronize your page turns, or boxes if you want to use boxes in your OID. And even then you can probably pilfer those from your flaccid theater program. So why cut the less expensive thing? I mean, it does cost money to have a bus driver drive you out 50 plus miles to a different school, unless your coach does it. But either way, you're still paying 2 faculty members, maybe even 3 if your team is big enough, to go out and wait all day. So that can be kind of concerning. Also, gas money for the bus can get expensive. I know, and this is going to be kind of a ridiculous story once you hear it, but this is real. Our high school speech team had 10 state qualifiers my senior year, and they booked a hotel only 2 days before we were supposed to be in Kearney for our state meet. And so we didn't get the nicest hotel. It smelled like cigarettes. But the basketball team, who did not end up qualifying for state my senior year, was able to go see the state tournament and stayed in a really nice hotel, even though they weren't competing. And so those priorities were kind of backwards to me, and I still don't understand why. But yeah, if you plan on going into acting, or if you plan on going to college with a very heavy speech background like I did, just be prepared to use those skills to the best of your ability, but also be adaptable. I know, since my college didn't like the speechy type of acting, doesn't mean your college won't. It's just more about like digging into that truth and being able to hone those skills in any way that you can going forward that would help you the most. And I think that's all I have to say on that. And so if you wanna subscribe to me, you can just go down there. And when the end screen pops up, you can also click on it. It's gonna be probably about right here-ish. Or you can click on some of the videos that are over here. That'd be like really cool. You can go check out the sports video that I just made, or the other random video that I plan on putting on the end screen. Yeah, alright. This is Dustin signing off, but only for now.